set? Good morning. Thank you for being here this morning for this important announcement. I want to start by thanking my partner in Consumer Protection, Commissioner Michelle Seagull, and the Department of Consumer Protection for her work. Also, the Commissioner of Banking, George Perez, and his team, Joe Chambers, who is our Finance and Revenue Services Section Chief, and also John Langmaid, Assistant Attorney General, and many others that have contributed to this result. I'm here this morning to announce that the state of Connecticut is part of a national multi-state settlement, settling a $1.85 billion claim with the national student loan servicer, Navient. So Navient, for all of you who still own and still owe student loan debt, including this guy. I don't know about you guys, but Navient is a major player in the national student loan market and in student loan servicing. So as part of this agreement, Navient will pay $1.85 billion to a total right now of 39 states, and importantly, they will get out of the federal student loan servicing business. That's a really important, what we call injunctive term. Injunctive meaning they have to do something, they have to get out of this business because of their history of misconduct and bad practices. So let me talk about the two highlights of what we're concerned about and have been investigating for some time. This investigation started before I became Attorney General, going back to 2013, Joe, if I have that right, under former Attorney General George Jepsen. I want to recognize him for his leadership on this issue. We all know that there have been some real challenges in the student loan market and in student loan servicing for some time. Those of us who still own student loan debt know that, for lack of a better description, there's an arms race in higher education. It just seems that higher education in all of its forms is ever more expensive, and the burdens placed on students and borrowers ever more significant, and people less and less know about what they're getting themselves into. They're offered a variety, a panoply of financial products that are hard to understand, hard to decipher. I can't say that when I was borrowing money for college and law school that I fully understood what I was getting into. It was just hard to fill out those forms, right? And what you were signing up for was at times indecipherable. A couple of really terrible and damaging practices. Number one was after you had entered into a student loan agreement and maybe you graduated from your program, were beginning in your first job or second job, maybe you were struggling to find a job, and if you needed the help of the servicer, you might call up Navient and ask, well, what can I do if I can't make payments or I'd like to make another arrangement? What they would do is Navient would steer you into loan forbearance programs that ultimately, they might have sounded good at that moment, but ultimately cost borrowers more. And borrowers were not always clear about what they were getting with these forbearance programs. Maybe you don't have to pay for some period of time, but ultimately that debt would come due, and with interest, penalties, fees, the commitment and the responsibility continued to grow. And for a lot of student loan borrowers, that was too much, and they were misled and deceptively led into accepting these forbearance programs. What they were not told is that there were other programs that they could access, like the public service loan program, right? And other loan programs and other payment plans that might have been better for them, but the easiest thing for Navient to do was to steer you into these forbearance programs. And that ultimately was very damaging for a lot of borrowers, including thousands of people in Connecticut. The other serious misconduct that I want to highlight is Navient's strategy and practice of putting certain borrowers into subprime student loan programs. So sound familiar, right? Subprime mortgages we're all familiar with. There are also subprime student loan products, these tended to be people who might be in programs, including for-profit programs, where it was an open question whether they were getting real value from these for-profit programs and whether they could find a job after they were done and graduated from these programs. And we, in the Office of the Attorney General, have been going after predatory for-profit higher education programs, helping to shut some of them down. But a lot of people borrowed money to get into these programs and then were not able to find gainful employment afterwards or to find employment that would help them pay off these loans. There were also people, like others who get into subprime programs, who maybe had a difficult credit history or didn't have the ability to pay them back. So it was these two types of practices, among many others, that led us to conduct this investigation. 39 states are coming together today in this multi-year and multi-state settlement. $1.85 billion is a big number. It will help a lot of people across Connecticut. Let me just summarize quickly. Around a little less than 1,400 borrowers will share in $19 million in direct private loan debt relief. Almost 5,000 borrowers will split nearly $1.3 million in restitution, and the state will receive $140,000 plus in restitution to be deposited in the general fund. So I just want to say that it's hard to think of financial products and commitments and obligations that are more important to people in Connecticut than things like student loans, right? If you think about what all of us undertake every single day, we have our utility payments. That includes electricity, internet, we have housing, but education is right up there. And so many of us take on huge obligations in order to get college degree or higher education, so we can put ourselves in the best position we can for ourselves and our families. And it's a very basic commitment that all of us make, and increasingly that commitment gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's wrong to deceive people when we're making such an important and vital and frankly not optional decision, right, to get a degree or get an advanced degree. It's not something people really have a choice on. If you want to pursue a particular field of study and then get a job, you've got to get a degree. And unfortunately, people are getting taken advantage of because big companies like Navient know that we need that money and we need access to higher education. And so people are getting taken advantage of, and they have been taken advantage of for a very long time. And hopefully this agreement and all of the terms in it, it sets new standards for the student loan market and student loan servicing market. Hopefully we can reestablish good practices, best practices in this market. Hopefully we can help people get into programs like the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program and reset the table for thousands of people across Connecticut who have student loan debt. And so with that, let me turn it over to the Commissioner of Consumer Protection. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Seagull, the Commissioner for the Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection. And going to college, earning a degree, that should really be an exciting milestone for people. It requires a huge commitment, both of time and money. And as was alleged in this complaint, for many people here and across the country, that accomplishment became much more devastating and costly burden than it needed to be, and one that they're continuing to struggle to pay off. Connecticut's Unfair Trade Practices Act is intended to prohibit unfair acts and practices, and it's hard to think of a better use of that than to address allegations that a company misled people about the loans they were taking out to pursue their dream of a higher education. I want to thank the Attorney General for his leadership and persistence in this case. Can't really overstate how complicated some of these cases can get, especially when you're dealing with loans and the representations around them. But because of the work of his office and his team here and working with their partners across the country, we're getting direct benefits to students in Connecticut and throughout the country in terms of canceling of a lot of this debt that they probably shouldn't have accumulated in the first place, and restitution for many more borrowers. Also really important is the other relief that the Attorney General just talked about, to change the conduct and the behavior so that going forward, future borrowers will hopefully not find themselves in the same situation of accumulating debt above and beyond what was necessary for their higher education. So congratulations and thank you for your leadership and all your work on this. This is going to be a huge benefit for a lot of people.
Thank you, Commissioner. Questions?
Attorney General Tong, is there anything that we as consumers can sort of just look out for when we are borrowing from these companies? Is there any sort of signs that we should be looking for?
So one thing I would say is there's a lot out there. There are a lot of resources out there. So first of all, before you pick up the phone, before you get into a student loan agreement, these are financial products, and I think that's one way to think about it. When somebody offers you a student loan, I think I always thought of it as like a course offering. It was something that my school was offering to me, and I thought about it from an academic lens, right? This is something that I engage in with my college or university or law school. It's not. It's a financial product, and you know, if you're going to get a credit card, if you're going to open a bank account, if you're going to have the opportunity to invest some money in a financial product, you're going to do some research and diligence. You should approach your student loans the same way. You should ask questions. And yes, you should take the time to read whatever you're signing, whatever's being offered to you, whether it is a federally guaranteed product or a private marketplace product. You should be clear as much as you can, and I just said before how hard it is, but you should do your best to understand. When you're in the loan repayment process, you should also ask questions and research what your options are. I talked a lot about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. There were huge problems with that program. Basically, it was not operative for a long time, but now because of President Biden's commitment and because of the work of our office and state attorneys general across the country, we've pushed to reopen that program, and there's a period of time now where people can get into that program and make sure that if you're eligible because of your work in service of your community, and that includes people that work in this building, that you can receive some forgiveness on your student loans. And there are a number of other different options and programs that are out there. Know that the problem was that Navient wasn't telling people what all of their options were. Hopefully that will change with other servicers. Ask questions, know there's more out there. Be skeptical when people offer you products, and really be clear about what your obligations are.
Is Navient divesting itself of all its current student loans?
It's getting out of the federally guaranteed student loan business. I understand they have a significant private market student loan business that for loans that aren't guaranteed by the federal government. I assume they'll stay in that business. There's also runoff work as they get out of it. They still have borrowers and accounts that I think are legacy as part of their current offerings, but they'll work those off over time.
So the federally insured accounts will be sold to another?
There'll be, I think, another servicer will step in. Anybody else?
Can we go back to the statute that I believe Commissioner mentioned it, but the law that would be sort of address the
Yeah. So that's our statute. The Connecticut Unfair Trade Practices Act, or CUTPA, is the state's basic consumer protection law. Every state has one. They sort of look like ours. Ours is very broad and very strong and very powerful, and the commissioner uses it very well. The commissioner is principally responsible for protecting consumers under the Connecticut Unfair Trade Practices Act. and we work alongside her on that. So it is a commonly used tool.
By that token, forgive my ignorance here, but I mean, you talked about the subprime loans being offered by these products. We've heard that term before.
Yeah.
We've heard about these companies that have irresponsibly been offering financial packages to people in an exploitative manner or misleading manner. I mean, is it time for more legislation here at the state or federal level? I mean, it's great that we can go after these folks once the harm has been done, but more preventative.
Yeah, so we're hoping that the injunctive relief that we forced Navient to agree to will reset the table for the whole industry. That's number one. Number two is there's a ton being done in the state legislature over there. And Student Loan Bill of Rights, I believe, a number of other initiatives. The president's doing a lot on the national level, and I know that all the federal agencies that may have a role in regulating the student loan industry, including the CFPB, the FTC, even the SEC, and then all the banking regulators are all focused on this issue too. So there's a lot happening in this space.
You said that, these borrowers don't have to take any action.
That's right.
But how do you make sure they are going to get their money back? You talked about they'll be notified in the mail, but, people move for jobs, they might not have that up to date.
So we will do the best we can to monitor compliance by Navient. I think that's why we're having this announcement today. There's about 5,000 people that are eligible to receive the restitution checks, and they'll get a postcard, I believe, in the mail that they're eligible to receive that. And then there's close to 1,400 borrowers who are going to receive direct loan forgiveness and debt relief. That's a total of $19 million because they were in those subprime products.
Is there any way they could check that out now? Like, is there something online that they
I don't think that there is a resource, but if anybody has a question, they can call our office and we can try to assist.
There's a website,
Okay, what's the website, Joe?
well, it's listed in the
No.
press release, but the state AGs have set up a website that borrowers can go to.
www.navientagsettlement.com. It's a very descriptive website URL. Anything else?
Can we have some off topic?
Sure.
Okay, all right, I'll do that.
Commissioner will take all those questions.
Can we just get, again, I know you sent out a press release yesterday, but can we just get your reaction again to the court upholding the decision to remove religious exemption
Yeah.
for vaccinations in schools?
This is a huge win for public safety and public health. And I think right now, in this moment, with Omicron circling around and all of us wearing our masks, the vital importance of vaccines and vaccinations is, in really sharp focus. And it's so important that as a state, we prioritize public health and the health and safety of our children. And this was a product of a long debate in the General Assembly. It was at times contentious, but I think most people understand and agree that we need to prioritize making sure that our kids are safe and safe in the classroom. All of us want our kids in school, right? Remote learning, did that, don't love it, it's terrible. We want to make sure that kids are in school and to make sure that they have that classroom experience with their peers. And the only way to do that is to make those classrooms as safe as possible. On the law, I'm not surprised. I was very confident in the state's position. I was confident that the legislature, in taking the action to remove the exemption, did so lawfully, and almost 100 years, or more than 100 years, of Supreme Court precedent and cases around public health support that view. And that's why the governor has broad authority to take the action he's taken during this pandemic over the last couple of years. It's that same authority that gives the legislature in the state of Connecticut the authority to impose requirements around vaccines so that we can keep everybody safe.
And I also wanted to ask you, in light of a couple of brazen crimes that have happened here in the state of Connecticut in Waterbury and West Hartford
Yep.
this past week, what is the update on the task force? Do you think it's working? Have you made any progress?
Yeah, there's near constant discussion among people in my office and over at the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection. We've put the task force together. I know that from my office, investigator, attorney representatives from my office are working on it now. They'll be representing the Office of the Attorney General on the task force. There's a lot happening across the country. We're in constant communication with our sister states and fellow attorneys general who have different experiences and different strategies for addressing organized retail crime. But, you know, if we didn't know what it was before, we certainly do now, and we're doing everything we can to stop it. On top of that, I should note, we're continuing to pressure the big technology platforms and social media platforms to help us stop this, because that's where a lot of these products go. Anyone else? All right, thanks for being here. Congratulations to you.